Welcome back to the Kaya Olson Show. So the Thomas More Society's Amistad Project has filed suit in Michigan asking the state Supreme Court to take custody of all election-related materials, the ballots, the poll books, etc. So here to talk about that is Ian Northon, one of the attorneys involved. So Ian, what is to be gained with this lawsuit?
Sure. Well, first, thanks for having me on the show. I mean, what's to be gained is my clients' fundamental rights. My clients have a right to vote in Michigan. They voted lawfully, and they don't want their votes watered down by illegal or unlawful votes. And that's what we've got here, unfortunately. The election officials, the Secretary of State's office and the head of elections had one job to do, run a clean election. And the evidence that we have, the eyewitnesses and other statutory violations show that they didn't do that one job. And so because of that, my clients are trying to ensure the accuracy and integrity of the election. That was what was written into the Constitution in Michigan about 2 years ago, and they want that taken care of. It's a matter of first impression for the Michigan Supreme Court as to what those provisions mean, but they want to try to preserve the secrecy of the ballot. They want to guard against abuses, and they want to make sure that they get equal protection, under state and federal constitution. That there's not disparate treatment of their votes compared to other people's votes. And so those are important civil rights, important fundamental rights here in Michigan and elsewhere. And so I think that's what they want. That's the goal of the lawsuit. And, we filed challenges before the election over what people think are technicalities or mundane violations about private money pouring into, city and local election officials, or, the absentee ballot issue. It has signature requirements, right? You have to sign a ballot. You have to sign a request in order to get a ballot under Michigan law, and you have to sign the ballot in order to turn it in and for the vote to count. And we've got widespread allegations and concrete evidence that wasn't done either on the front end to send out the ballots, what we would call unsolicited ballots, or on the back end to turn them in. And so people think those are technicalities, but there's a reason why the legislature put those in place, right? Those are anti-fraud provisions. And so my clients want to make sure that their vote is counted properly, counted lawfully, and it's not diluted by these unsolicited ballots or improper votes.
So how many unlawful ballots or illegal votes are you talking about?
Well, it's a pretty big number. I was surprised by it, but when our experts crunched the number, it just came down to an issue of math. And so based on the state's own election data and the surveys, calling people and recording those calls, did you request the ballot? Did you in fact vote? And running those numbers and extrapolating them, we've got a little over 355,000 unsolicited ballots. Now that's a shocking number. That's out of 3.5 million people who purportedly voted by absentee ballot in Michigan this cycle, the most ever. About 10%, 355,000 of them were improper. We've got just under 30,000, 29,000 and change. These are the people who voted, said they voted, they requested the absentee ballot, say they voted, but according to Michigan election records, they do not have a vote cast in their name. That means their vote was either thrown out or spoiled in some way. That's 30,000 people. Now, I don't know whether or not those people would have voted for a particular candidate or for a particular party, but for 30,000 good votes to get thrown out and some 355,000 improper votes to get let in, that's a serious problem. But it goes on. I've got another 35,000 in change based on the Michigan election data these are people who voted with no address. That violates Michigan law. You've got another 13,000 and change that voted out of state with somebody registered to vote in another state. That's a serious problem, right? That means they potentially are voting in more than one state, or at least they're registered to vote someplace else, which means they're not, quote, a resident of Michigan, which is required under Michigan law to vote here. So this goes on. And so if you tally up the list, this is what the experts call, within a certain degree of mathematical certainty, right? Mm-hmm. So they run it 95% mathematically certain, 99% mathematically certain, 99% mathematically certain. The number is over 500,000 unlawful votes, 508,016 according to my expert reports. And that's a range. It actually could be higher, but this is based on that mathematical certainty. We picked the most conservative or the lowest number within that range, and it's over 500,000 votes.
So this is the way I sort of understand the situation. So the problem, though, that exists right now is that once the ballot is approved by the challengers, Now, obviously, there's a lot of debate about whether or not that actually happened. But once those ballots are approved, they're run through the machine. That's technically considered a good vote. Now, again, whether or not they are or not, I don't think they are, but that's how the state considers those good votes. What do you do at that point when those votes are considered good votes? They're sent through the machine, they're counted, they're tabulated, they're locked into the metal box, never to be seen again. What do you do then?
Well, the reason why you lock them in those boxes, it's not so they'll never be seen again. It's to protect them. And so Michigan also has a right constitutionally to an audit. For that audit to be meaningful, you have to, have the officials. In this case, I would ask the Michigan legislature to do it, right? The executive branch already messed this up. So I would ask the Michigan legislature to go in, open up those seals, and check the signatures, right? Who signed for this? It's like a chain of custody. If anybody's watched Law and Order on TV, right, they understand that anything that goes into that police locker has a chain of custody. But the statutes, the laws require you to sign for the ballots when you pick them up from the precinct or the clerk's office, sign for the ballots when you seal them up for the night, if you're in the middle of counting, sign for them when you unseal them, sign for them when you put them through the tabulator. And if there's any changes, right, if there's any curing or duplicating of ballots, right, you're supposed to have one Republican and one Democrat sign off on that. Let's just check the chain of custody. They're not meant to be thrown in there never to be seen again. They're meant to be thrown in there and protected, safeguarded in case there's a problem. So let's pull them out. Let's do a real audit, and let's make sure that the lawful votes get counted and the unlawful votes do not. And there's indicia there. There's ways to tell, right, whether or not they were proper or not. And those signatures should match. And we're hearing also eyewitnesses say that the chain of custody was broken in a variety of ways. Those are serious issues that prevent a meaningful audit. So we need to get it to the bottom of that quickly. And I would ask the legislature, because it has what they call plenary authority. It's their job in the first place. Now they've delegated some of this to the executive branch, but under the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, they need to take that back, ask those hard questions, and get the Secretary of State and the head of elections to answer those questions and prove to the people of Michigan that they did it fairly and accurately. And if that can be done, then you would certify, right? Then you would, instead of rubber stamping a fraud, it's like garbage in, garbage out. These are just tabulation machines, right? So if you put garbage in, you'll get garbage out. But if you go back and double check and make sure, for example, that the number of votes equal the number of ballots, that's the issue that we heard out of Wayne County. We've got two affidavits from two of the canvassers there that said more than 70%, 71% of the AV counting boards had more votes than ballots. Well, that's a problem, right? And that didn't just happen in Detroit. People think this is a Detroit issue. No, it happened in Canton Township and Livonia. It happened over here in Kent County on the west side of the state. So there's some serious issues here that the Secretary of State and head of elections need to account for. And then once that gets done, then I think we can have confidence that the election had accuracy and integrity, like my clients and everyone in Michigan is entitled to.
So, again, the reality of the situation, though, is you would think that the city clerk in Detroit, the Wayne County clerk, the Genesee County clerk, etc., I mean, we could probably list a whole list of them, you would think that they would want to get to the bottom of the allegations and these affidavits. And we're not talking just a couple affidavits of people who were upset about something. You have well over 100 affidavits of people who are alleging very specific breaches of the law, breaches of procedure, ignoring procedure, etc. But you don't have, in those counties that we're talking about, you don't have county prosecutors that are going to do anything. The Michigan Secretary of State clearly is not going to do anything. The Michigan Attorney General is not going to do anything. And based on what I saw from the House and the Senate oversight committees, I'm sort of wondering if the Republican majority in the legislature is really going to do anything. Do you think that they will?
Well, I hope so, right? Winter comes early to Michigan sometimes, right? So I hope they're not hibernating already. I hope that they take their constitutional duty seriously. All of those people you just rattled off, the prosecutors, the executive branch, the attorney general, the legislature, they all took oaths to uphold and defend the Constitution here in Michigan. And so I hope they take that seriously. Now, I'm just a civil lawyer, right? So I'm not charging anybody with crimes. I'm not doing anything like that. But I think we can help point out these inaccuracies, point out these serious issues, and hope that those elected officials and appointed bureaucrats do their job faithfully. It's interesting because we had more than, you mentioned all those affidavits. I've seen some of the other lawsuits. We've had more than 36 eyewitnesses in my case alone. And, that's what we call evidence, right? When you go into court, that's called direct evidence. It's not circumstantial evidence. That's direct evidence. Then you take your experts. That's circumstantial. That's good evidence too, right? But I think it's irresponsible for the media to suggest that there's no evidence here of irregularities. Quite the opposite. There's overwhelming evidence. And it's really shocking because to me, if you saw error rates of 0.7% or even 7%, you would think that was high. But to see error rates of 71%, I'm dumbfounded by that. And to see more than 500,000 ballots, get called into question based on the state's own election data, I would call upon them to release the rest of the data. Release the rest of the data so that independent folks, people of goodwill, can run the numbers, right? At some point, it's an arithmetic problem. It's interesting. Another thing I don't think people know about is that Rock the Vote. Rock the Vote is by many seen as a partisan group. It's got LA movie stars and LA rock stars, right? That are, typically partisan. They're typically promoting progressive causes. There's a contract that Jonathan Brader, head of elections here in Michigan, executed, a no bid contract to give Rock the Vote your election data. It's your driver's license number, your social security number, your eye color, your birth date, your address, your full name. Why does Rock the Vote have that data? And why were they getting updates live streamed or in real time using an API feed? Not to get into the weeds about the tech, but why do they have your data when their job purportedly is to register new people to vote? Why do they need that doesn't add up. Like, what's going on with that? These are hard questions, but why are they getting real-time updates when the American people and the people of Michiganders can't get straight answers? I would implore all these officials that if they have ballot boxes preserved, my apologies, I would implore all folks of goodwill to preserve this evidence. Do not spoil this evidence. Do not destroy this evidence. Keep those laptops. Keep those thumb drives. Keep those paper ballot books, right? They should have signatures in them. Do not destroy this evidence. By statute and by rule, you should keep it. Litigation is pending. In the fullness of time, let's get to the bottom of this to make sure that all of our elections are fair and accurate. I'm licensed down in Florida too and spent some time down there. And, Florida was the laughingstock of the country back in 2000 when, folks in Palm Beach counted one way and folks in Broward County counted another way. And under Bush versus Gore, that was over just a few thousand votes. But the point is equal treatment under the Constitution requires you to treat all votes the same. And you have to do it the same way in one county as the other. And to me, Michigan, I don't want them to be the laughing state, right? I grew up here. I was born here. I work here. I've worked my whole professional career to get back here. This is my home state. I want us to be, a model for the way it should be done. Florida counted 3 times as many votes in a third of the time and has no widespread allegations of fraud or irregularity. But it's because they followed federal law. It's called the Help America's Vote Act, a HAVA plan. They stuck to the plan, they followed the rules, and did a great job. And Michigan didn't follow the plan, broke those same rules, and now we're seeing the consequences. It's really embarrassing.
Well, and as Rudy Giuliani said to the House Oversight Committee on Wednesday night, the reason that they had a clean election in Florida was because people were prosecuted for fraud in the 2018 election, and so they were either on the lookout for it or people weren't going to do it again. But that's why we're continuing to see these horror stories come out of places like Wayne County and Genesee County, et cetera, across the state. But unfortunately, we're out of time. Ian Northon, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for the opportunity, and I appreciate your interest in the case.
Thank you so much for joining me today. For more of my work, go to Breitbart.com or find me on Twitter, Kyle Olson 4. Use the same handle for Parler, Kyle Olson 4, KYLEOLSON, and the number 4. This is the Kyle Olson Show.